Okay, so as mentioned, where the tutorials are is if you go up to the right hand side and do the question mark, you'll see that it says, you scroll down, tutorials, student curriculum, variety of other things. Let me just do a quick thing. Yeah, so Solidworks Content is what I went into there. You can grab like examples and things. We're not going to worry about that, but it might be fun just to kind of look around and play and explore. So let's go back here, go to tutorials. This is the first one we're going to do, the introductions to SolidWorks. You know what, I'm going to keep this on the screen here just so you can see as I go through as well. I was going to move it off the screen. So as before, we're going to go File, Open. Oh, nope. File, New. We get the option of a part, assembly, or a drawing. We'll start with our part. Very first thing we want to do, as we talked about before, you see all of our icons and things up here. Very first thing I do, actually, is I change it to white. Next, hold on. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I just need to get the layout quite right so that I can have this on the screen. Next I do is I come into my options. I go to make sure everything is set up. So if you guys recall from the video, I want to make sure my performance, where it's at. Main thing is image quality to make sure. You can see if I draw a circle here, it's going to be low res. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to really lower these things down so you can see it at first. This is something you can change at any time.
Sorry, I wonder, are you sharing the screen? Because I'm able to see any simple information.
Okay, so that's not a question for me. Okay. So we'll just start off here and I'll show you what that does. I want to also go into my units, make sure I know what I'm working with. For this one, let me just see here. I want to make sure I get it right. Actually, because it doesn't actually it doesn't really matter. Okay, so they're doing it in millimeters. So we'll come here, set up the millimeters. Then we're also going to go into dimensioning. And we will leave that alone for now. Okay. So we've got everything set up. You can see that the part we're going to make is here. Again, I like to turn on all my planes so I can see them. I will turn on my origin. I can turn things on and off through the view, so I can hide them, change them, do whatever I need. For here, I'm going to go hide and show. I want to go to my origin. And that's just really helpful for when you guys are starting out, that you know where everything is. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off, and before we do anything and move into it, we're going to determine how we're going to build this. So again, the way I view top, front, and right is I always view top as the countertop, whatever something is going to rest on. Front is going to be... Yep.
We're not seeing anything. Your stream went away.
Okay, hold on. Sorry about that. I forgot to share the screen. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for saying that versus waiting for the end of the class. Although it's still recording, so we're good. So I verbally walked through things. Do you guys need me to kind of run back and show you the stuff that I talked about? No? Okay. So for this object, I'm going to say that the top surface is going to be at the bottom of this. so that if I'm looking down at it, I'm going to see this top view. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to my first part, and the very first thing you see, the tutorial is going to tell you to do exactly what we just did. The next thing is we want to start the very beginning of this. Now, if you follow along with the tutorial says click Extrude Boss Base on the feature toolbar. So if we come over here, that's the feature bar. So I'm going to start because what it is that I want to take that object and I want to make the base part and I want to thicken it. So in order to do this, I'm going to add material to the scene because I've got nothing right now. So if I select the Extrude Boss, automatically it says, okay, in order to extrude something, you need a sketch. All commands need some type of sketch to begin with for creation. What it's going to ask next is, where do you want to sketch? For that, I'm going to click top. And you can see that it automatically goes to that planar top view. I mean, if you view this as all as 3 pieces of paper, it automatically puts it on your desk and you're going to sketch. So now, what you're going to do is, you know the diameter or the radius of the object that you're going to build. We're going to come up to our circle. And if you notice under circle, you've got a perimeter circle, or you've got a start at a center point and give the radius. So here's, if I click on this, then I can drag it out to the radius that I need. Make it whatever size I want. The other option is I can go to circle perimeter, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use points. So I'm going to use 3 points along the perimeter to create the circle. I'll be honest with you, I don't usually use that. Now, something else you saw that I did is that I snapped to my origin. And you can kind of see, it's hard to see, but when I snap to there, you can see what's called the coincident point. And what that means is by snapping to this, I can't move the circle around other than to increase its size. So when we're doing sketching, that's called defining your model. So for example, I'm going to come here, I'm going to draw a circle. There is nothing defining that model. There's no dimension saying what size it is, so I can do that. There's no dimensioning saying, well, where should this be? So I can move the circle wherever I want. What I'm going to teach you is, throughout this class, is not necessarily how to model like an engineer, but how to model like an industrial designer in the beginning. And what that means is I don't sit down and fully define my model. The only time that I fully define my model is when I'm going to say at the end of this model, I am done and it's being given to the engineer. We're not making changes to it. If not, what I do is I allow myself to pull things and move them around, especially when I'm drawing curves. But for this, we already know the outcome that we want. The model's defined. What I want to do is get this to the center here. And again, I can either start and snap to that origin. Now it's defined in the sense that I can't move it around because it has a relationship. And what that means is the center of this circle has a relationship with the origin in some way, shape, or form. So for that, it means that it's coincident. Now, I can... Question for me? Nope.
Where's the great human?
So I can dimension it off of that plane, and I'm going to say it's going to be this dimension. I can change that dimension. Now it is defined on how far it is off that center line. But I can still move it vertically, but I just can't move it back and forth because that dimension says that's how it has to be, and I can adjust the diameter. Now if I come in, add another dimension, and I'm going to say it's going to be that high, and then let's just add a third dimension that controls the diameter. This is what's called a fully dimensioned sketch. I cannot move it. You can see how the circle line is black. That means it's fully defined. I can click on it. I can't change the size by dragging, and I can't change the location by dragging, because I've determined the distance horizontal and vertical, and also the diameter of the circle. Now, if I want, I can do 0, and I can do 0, and have those dimensions like that. The advantage of having those reference points is that it's much easier for me just to snap to that center, because I know I'm never going to want it anywhere but the center. And then I can make the circle, I'll dimension it. Now you'll see I can come up here and I can click on the smart dimension, or I can use my right mouse button to pull up a variety of commands. And in there is the auto insert dimension. So I can click that. Come on. There we go. I'm going to give it 1.54. There's no way that's right. That's what I thought. That's one of the things that I hate about these tutorials. Oh, well, let me show you that too. So I've keyed in the dimension. If I want to change that dimension, I highlight it and I double click it with my left mouse button. That pulls it up. Now I can grab this, and it's a flywheel, and I can adjust it like that. And that kind of gives me that freedom to drag it, even though there's a number on it, as if I was doing it without the number. Or I can key in my number, 128. So that's in millimeters. Now, one of the biggest advantages when doing math in here is, let's say someone said, well, I need that to be 5.5 inches. And I don't know how to do that math off the top of my head to get that to convert it to millimeters. What I can do is I can type in 5.5 inches. It's hard to see, but I use that little inch symbol. Hit accept, and it automatically converts it to what it would be in millimeters. So that's a good way to do the math. So I could do, what's 128 times 2? I could go 128 times 2, and it's going to give me that math. So it's a nice built-in feature when you're doing things. So let's just go back to our 128. Now, I'm looking at this circle, and I zoom in, and the circle's not really a circle. Look at those jagged edges. You know, it's kind of like, what's going on? That is...
What's going on, man?
What's that? Sorry, I thought someone said something. That is because in my settings, go to document properties, go to image quality. That kind of looks like what I've got going on here. If I increase this, and I increase this, and I hit OK, if I increase that and increase that, and I hit OK, it should have corrected it. Let's come back, go customize. Oops. Options. Performance. Oh, sorry. Document properties. Image quality. I don't know why that didn't update it. Okay. Actually, it did. Okay. So now what's visually represented is more accurate, but depending on your computer and your graphics card, it may slow down your screen. So we kind of talked about that before. Even if I'm working on a massive assembly, you know, let's think about a piece of large medical equipment that has absolutely everything in it: bolts, nuts, circuit boards, and all that. If my machine bogs down, that's the first thing I do is to turn that down. So, whole lot of talking I just did. If you recall in the very beginning, I used the extrude command. Well, I'm now finished with my sketch. So I did what Solidworks did. I told it I was going to do the extrude command. It told me I needed a sketch. I'm done with my sketch. What I'm going to do now is hit exit out of my sketch, which is up over here. You can also right click and you'll see it's here. Now you can see that I can extrude something. So if I look over here, I'm extruding from this sketch plane. I'm going blind. What that means is I'm just dragging it. It's not extruding up to something. It's not going past something by a certain dimension. And we'll get into those different ones a little bit later. There's other things that we can do. You can add draft to it. So a really quick way to make a cone versus not. We can go outwards. We can actually extrude it in two different directions. So I turned on direction 2. And now I can extrude it the other way. So where I can do it through a number, I can also grab this arrow, highlight it, and you can see how I can do that. So for this, we're only going to go in one direction. And we're going to set the depth to 7 millimeters. Now, when I'm over here, if I hit enter, it just means that that's all I'm doing in that command. Once I have that set the way I want it, hit the check mark. Or again, come down here, hit check mark. Now we've got our first part of the object. So that base is done. You don't need to save as much as the tutorials tell you, but it is good to save. SolidWorks still does crash. You guys are on, most of you are on boot camp, so there's a greater chance that you'll crash, even though they say it's 100% stable. I usually try to remind myself to save as often as I can. Also, a really important thing is don't necessarily save the same name every time. When you get out into the workforce, it's called revisions. So I might do this and I might save the first one as car component rev A. If I get to a certain point, I'll save it as rev B. And the reason for that is if I save it the same name every single time, if the file gets corrupted, I have nothing. Versus if I have a name, then I can still go back to the last one I named it. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, awesome. Let me just see something here. I want to make sure no one is typing. No one's typing questions. Voice channel, general, voice channel, general. There we go. Okay, so we've got our first part. Now we're going to go next. So what they want to do now is You know what? Let me do something. No, I'm not going to bother. So what we're doing now, if you recall, this was a device that had those circles in the center. Let's just go all the way back. We've got these bosses going up. If I'm looking at this and someone hands me this part, or I've sketched it up, I want to look at this in the simplest way possible. So, for example, let me do this here. I'm going to go back a step here. Let me pull up Sketchbook. So when I look at this, if someone gives me this part, or if I've sketched this up, before I start modeling, I try to figure out what am I going to do. So I'll look at this and I'll quickly say, okay, what are the characteristics of this item that I'm going to model here? There's my brushes. So I'm going to say the first thing I'm going to model is this, and that's basically a circle that's extruded as a cylinder. Then next I'm going to say, okay, what is next? Well, I've got another cylinder that's a circle, and it's a pattern that goes all the way around here. So what ways could I do this? Well, we already learned about extrude. So I could do a sketch on this face and draw each one of these circles in the sketch and then extrude it. What I could also do is I could look at this and say, well, you know what? I'm going to draw one circle, I'm going to extrude it, and then I can use what's known as the pattern command, and I can do a circular pattern. Every way is right. There is no wrong way. Each way gives you a little bit of different freedom. So if I come back into here, and I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to say, okay, well, I want to sketch this. I'm going to select this face this time. Instead of a plane, I'm selecting a face. And I'm going to say I want to create a new sketch. And this one always gets me confused. I always grab the wrong one. When I right click, you can see two little sketch bars here, or one sketch up here. Up here, that creates a new sketch. If you click on here, that one actually edits the sketch for that component, and you want to go to sketch, new sketch. So we're going to go there. We're going to go to the top view. And what I first want to do is I want to define where those circles go. So I could come in and I can say, well, I'm going to draw a circle, and I'm going to put the dimension on it. And we're going to make it 20. And then I can come in and say, well, I'm going to place it and I'm going to eyeball it like this. And then I'm going to copy, paste it, kind of move it over here. So just kind of like you do in Illustrator. Now the problem with that is someone comes into the sketch, they can accidentally move it, duplicate it, something. Plus, if you accidentally move it, or the reality is this is not in the exact same spot. So what I can do then is I could dimension this and give it the exact dimension and then make the rest of the circles, but that might be a little bit of a pain. What I can do is I can come in and draw a circle at the right diameter that I need. So I'm going to draw in a circle, and I'm going to say that it's going to be 85 millimeters off. So the center of these bosses are going to be at 85 millimeters off the front. Now, one of the things, if it is a solid line, when I go to try to extrude it, it says, hey, look, here's a solid circle. I can select that, and it's only going to extrude. Whoops. If I select that, it's going to extrude that part with the cutout. If I come back, and you look here and it says contour selected, that's the line you want. So I can have more than one sketch and only select it. So I'm going to come back and clear it. I can come in here, click that, and click that. Now I'm going to get the full circle. If you don't want to take that approach, what we can do is we can take that sketch or that line and change it to construction geometry. What that means is it is a dashed line, and what that represents is just a reference point. You can snap to it, all that, but it won't extrude it. So if I make that a reference geometry, and then I go to extrude it, it will only extrude that item, nothing else in the sketch. Now, what that allows me to do is I want to edit that sketch. I'm going to click edit. I can now take this, snap it to that plane, and then I can select the middle, hit Control, select that circle, and what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, I want to make a relationship between there. So I'm going to come over on the other side. I'm going to use coincident, which means they're touching. And there it is. So now it has a relationship, and this is parametric modeling. If someone comes and says, or you come and say, I need this to be a little bit smaller, I can come in, I will click on this, and I will go 50. And what it does is it knows to move this circle because it's already attached to there. So let's go back, I think, what was it, 128. Oh! Let's go with 75. Now, in sketching tools, we have tools to make a linear pattern. A lot of things, it's funny because a lot of things are buried. So that says linear pattern. If I click on the drag down menu, there's my circular pattern. So it's kind of hidden. Best way is to look at it and say, if I want to make a pattern, where is something? Oh, it says pattern. Let me click on it and go to circular. What that does is it brings up the circular pattern, and then it's going to ask where I want to pivot around. So, oh, no, that's reverse direction, sorry. We're going to select the point. Wait, hold on. Entities, this. There we go. So, it's a little bit backwards. So first I'm going to select the point that it wants to revolve around. So I'm going to say I want to revolve it around this point here. Then I can come down and say, do I want to revolve it 360 degrees? Do I want to revolve it 45 degrees? Equal spacing. How many do I want? And it automatically puts that number in between the 45 degrees. So if I go 360, you can see how many it does, and it fills up with 10. It shows that I'm selecting the arc to pattern. Now if I do this, I can then come back and I can extrude this part. We'll exit out of the sketch. I'm going to come back, I'm going to select extrude. It wants to know what I want to extrude, so I'm going to select the sketch. Now here you can see by clicking that line, even though it's on a sketch, I only selected one contour. So let's go back out of there. This time I'm going to highlight the sketch, and I'm going to say extrude. If I highlight the entire sketch, everything that is in there is going to extrude versus having to click each one. So depending on what you want to do, you've got options. Now, one of the biggest things is this button right here, Merge Results. I'm going to eventually teach you about parent modeling, but the biggest thing is if when we do this command, I want this to be attached to this, to be one piece. I need to make sure Merge Results is on. And by default it is. So I'll select yes. And then up here, the moment I created a solid body, it says, hey, there's one solid body. If I select it, it shows that whole item. Now, let's say I wanted all these to be an individual component that I can do something with. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to right click, go to Edit Feature. And if I turn off Merge Results, it's going to make these all individual pieces. So I'll hit Select. Now you can notice over here, each one of those is an individual item that I can do something with. So it's like having multiple parts within a file. Okay, now here is something you can see up here. We have radiuses on the top of each one of these. Well, by doing this method, let me just go back and make this a solid body. By doing this method, I made the circular pattern for the sketch, but if I want to come and put radiuses on this, then I need to come in, go to my features, go fillets, and I need to select every single face that I want to put the fillet on. What that does is it makes it cumbersome. It's many more steps, and speed in SolidWorks isn't about how quick you can push the buttons necessarily. It's how few steps you can do it in. Also, the fewer steps you can do something in, the easier your menu tree is, as well as making sure it doesn't blow up. I'm not necessarily worried about anybody going fast. No one's going to be timed. I'm not doing this garbage where it's like, hey, let's see how good you are. You've got 40 minutes to do it in. That's not where we're at. So what I could do differently is if I look at this and say, you know what? Every one of these is the same. So what I could do is I could make this object first, do all the things I want to this object, and then I can make a pattern out of that object. That might be more efficient. So with that said, we're going to go back here. I'm going to delete that extrude command. So again, I can right click. When I delete the command, the sketch does not go away. That's a separate thing because they're two separate entities. I'm going to come back in. I'm going to edit the sketch. I am going to go back. You can see here where it shows a little linear pattern. If I double click that, it goes back to my pattern. Let's just hit delete all. Let me delete these. Oh, it didn't want to do that. So I'm going to go old school. So now I've got my one circle. And what I want to do is I'm going to extrude that up. So we're going to go back and we're just going to extrude. Exit out of the sketch. We're going to go extrude. Again, if you don't have an item to extrude, it's going to ask you what plane or where do you want to draw your sketch. Or utilize an existing sketch. So I'm going to come here, click on that. Let's just go with 25. Now, hold on one second. Let me just see what they did here. I'm curious. Oh, okay, so they did that first. Ah, awesome. I'm going to show you this anyway. So here, we're going to make it 25. We're going to extrude that up. It's all one part, I know, because when I click on the solid bodies, it shows it there. Well, all of a sudden in my model, I decide, oh, I need to do this ring first. That's going to make more sense. What I can do is, or you know what, let me do a few other commands here just to go. So I need to put a hole that goes all the way through here. So again, I'm going to do a sketch, and I could do a sketch on this surface, or I could do a sketch on this surface. It makes it easier if I do this, because when I go to plane, I have that item. Now, right click, I'm going to create a sketch. Now, what I can do is I'm just going to do a simple parameter, and I can draw it like this, and I can dimension it. So there it's fully defined. It's at the center of this, and I'm giving it a number which we'll say is 12. I'll do the extrude cut this time. So extrude cut over here to the side. Exact same thing. Now what it's saying is, what is the sketch plane? We already had that selected. How deep of a cut do you want to do? So we're just going to do blind at this time, and I can drag it. I want to make sure it goes all the way through. So I'm just going to go really, really far. Let's hit select. So there it is there. Well, I also want to put some radiuses on this. So let's put a fillet in. So I'm going to add the fillet. I'm going to add it to an edge, which is here. I've got full preview on. The moment something doesn't show up for a radius, it usually means that it's too large. So I know that this is only 15 millimeters. So by having a 10 millimeter radius isn't going to work. So let's go back to a 5. You can see that's still way too big. So we're going to go to a 0.5. Let's go 1. Now, I can add multiple edges. So I could add just to this, and I can add to this. Now, I've got 2 radiuses. If I ever want to go back and say, hey, let me change this radius, come in, I can right click, edit it, and I can say it's going to be 2 mils. That works if you always know those radiuses are going to be the same size, because I can't change them individually. If for some reason I decide, well, this fillet may need to be bigger than this one at some point, or I want to have that freedom in my design, then what I'm going to want to do is do 2 fillets. I'll select the first one and do the outside edge. We'll make that 1 millimeter. And then I'll do the second one and go 2 millimeters. Now I can go back and edit each one of those individually. That's kind of going to give you that freedom. Okay, at this point we've done a bunch of commands, and we decide, oh, I need to do this. Were you guys taught about the rollback feature and all that last semester? No?
Sort of.
Okay. So again, this is my history tree. This is my feature tree. You can also come up here and see the history of everything that you did. Well, I decide that I want to draw that circle before I drew this boss. So here's that boss. So if I just simply roll this back, it hides that fillet as if it never happened. Go back again, go back again, go back one more. Now the reason I want to go back to this point is if I come back and say, oh, hey, I need to draw that in. If I come in and say, okay, I'm going to do a sketch, it's got to be the center of that, so I'll draw my circle. Circle's going to be at the middle of my origin. It wants to be there. I'm going to give it a wall thickness, so I'm going to offset it. I'm going to do that. And now I want to extrude it. Let's only go so high. Well, the problem is, now I've got this going through here. So then I would have to re-punch a hole. Versus, if I had rolled back up here and drew it first and then did the other one. So now I could come in and I can say, well, let me do this. We're going to draw that. We're going to create a sketch. We're going to draw a circle. Instead of drawing a second circle, I always know that I want that to be an offset, so I'm going to use my offset command. I'm going to select what I want to offset. We'll go 3 millimeters. You can see that it goes outwards. If that's not the right direction, I can reverse it, and it goes inwards. I can make sure that I add a dimension. Adding the dimension means that I can easily double click that and change it. Oh, not that much. Now I can hit enter. We'll go back, we'll extrude. I'll hit select. Now I can then roll down. There's my boss. It's all joined now, one part. Here's my cut extrude. You can see that it goes all the way through now. So just because you didn't do a step in the right order doesn't mean that you're done. You can go back and adjust that. Question for you guys. I know that this is a refresher, but am I giving you too much information at once on options and different ways of doing things? Or is this a good level of information, or is it confusing? You guys let me know. Good? Okay. Now, I'm going to scroll all the way down here, and we got all our fillets done. Now, I'm going to show you something different. Because a lot of this, especially as you guys are learning, the biggest thing is your feature tree. Oops, this didn't work. Oops, I need to change this. So you can go back in your feature tree and do that. I'm going to come back here, select the boss extrude, and I'm going to delete it. Because we're going to say that I never figured out that I need to do something. Here's my boss extrude. It's not what I want. It's not where I want it. But I can click, hold it, so I'm left clicking, holding it, and now what I can do while holding the left mouse button, I can drag it up to a certain point and have it come before. Although I don't know what is the reason that it's not going to let me go up past there. Oh. So yeah, so this is where the parent-child relationship comes in. That can be a pain. In order to have this here, this cut has to take place before this extrude. So I can only go back up to before that cut or after that cut. So what that means is the first way I did it is what I would need. So let's see if we can just Sit right back in here and tail of a. There we go. So we're going to say that that's what we have to do. So let's come back. We'll delete this. Again, I'm just going to grab that little blue bar with my left mouse button, drag it down. Well, we don't need it, so we're going to delete it. Keeping in mind, the sketch is still there. Well, I like to keep my menu tree as clean as I can, so I'm going to delete that as well. So now we've got this component, this component. Let's see what they do next. So they sketch a hole right in the center. You can see that it doesn't really matter what order you do things in, especially in this situation, what feature, it varies. So I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to do the hole later. Oh, I see what they're doing. Matt. Okay. What they're doing is they're adding their fillets and their radiuses in a certain order. And the reason you want to do that is if I have this boss extrude already joined to this before I say I pattern it, when I go to add in a radius, I can click on this edge and you can see that it stops there, which may be fine. But if I have multiple of these in a pattern, and let me just go here. I'll show you guys this in a little bit, but I just want to do this quick. We're going to say it's a circular pattern. No. Hold on. So I'm going to say I want to take all these features and make a pattern around them, just like I did with the sketch. Oh. So, I don't know why I did that, but if I want to go now put a radius in, I have to come in, and again, I have to select every single edge, which just cumbersome. It's slow. Now, let's delete this. If I come back again, roll back up to this spot here, what I can do is I can put all my radiuses in first. So this is what I talk about one of the things is when to put your radiuses in what order. Radiuses don't always go in as the last item. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to put a radius here, and I'm just going to make them all 1 millimeter for the all intents and purposes. Now, when I come here and I do my boss extrude and the cut, you can see that the radius automatically ends there. Now, I can come in and say, okay, I want to do a pattern. And I'm going to pattern a circular pattern. And I want to do some features. I want to extrude or pattern not only this extrusion that you see here. So if I select on that, I also want to extrude, bear with me. Okay, I made this boss. I want to extrude, or I want to pattern all these items. I want to pattern the extrude, I want to pattern the cut, and I want to pattern the things, the radiuses. These all make up that one feature. So I can come in, go circular pattern. First thing it's going to ask for is what do I want to pattern it about? Well, I don't really have anything. There's nothing I can click. I can click the origin, but it's looking for a center axis. What I want to do is create a center axis around this object, which would be where you see this dotted line, which is the complete intersection of the front and right plane. This is also why I like to work at the origin. So I'm going to come up here, and again, if I'm adding something, I always go to Insert. I'm adding what's referred to as reference geometry. It's not geometry that I'm building something off of. It's something that I'm going to do to reference when I make something. Click on Reference Geometry, and I want to put in an axis. Axis. Very first thing it says, what do you want to use? So the simplest one that we're going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to use 2 planes. Right down here. And then it says, what 2 planes? Well, I want to use the front plane, and I want to use the right plane. You can see that it's drawn one there. So now I have an axis that I can reference. If I wanted to do an axis on something different, I could also come in, Insert, Reference Geometry, Axis, and I could come in and say, well, you know what? I want to do it on a cylindrical face. So if I select this, it automatically puts one at the center. So there's a lot of different tools that you could use. I could have used this face to put in the axis, and it would have done it right at the center. Now, for clarity's sake, let's just delete these. So, now what we want to do is we want to go and do a linear pattern or circular pattern. So we're going to click circular. First thing it says is a direction. I'm going to, hold on, for some reason my axes aren't showing. So I'll turn that on. If you make something and all of a sudden you can't find it, start with hide show. So first thing is it's going to ask me, what do I want to rotate around? This now is 3D space versus a 2D piece of paper. So in a 2D sketch, I can use a point because it knows that that's where it is. 3D space, I need a 3-dimensional object. So we're going to select that. It's not showing anything patterning, but now what I can do is I can come down here and I can select a feature or faces. So you can see that if I come down and I select that boss, it automatically patterns that boss. But the radiuses aren't there. The hole's not there. Because all I did was select that one command that we made. Well, I want all of it. I want this feature, which was the extrude, this feature that was the hole, and then the 2 fillets. So I'm going to come back, I'm going to right click, go edit feature. I'm going to come into where it says features and faces, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab the other one. So there's my cut. Let me see if I can do something here. Okay, so here you can kind of see the yellow outline, but you can't see the hole. So I'll do the cut. Now you can kind of see the hole. Then I'm going to do the fillet and then the other fillet. I'll hit select. Now, before where you saw I was going to have to put all those radiuses on individual lines, because I did that secondary or the first, these all go through that. So we're good. It's nice and easy. Let me see what they do next. Yada, yada, yada. Yada, 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 yada. Okay. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to do the center hole. So again, I could select on this face Ooh, here's a good example of something else that you can do. So this is really the power of parametric modeling. So if I come on this face and I'm going to do my sketch, I'm going to draw my circle. Just to continue to reinforce this, I'm going to dimension it. I will always beat you up if I see dimensions that are 49.65633995. There's no way anybody needs that dimension that tight. Make it an even number. If it's 49.6, I'm fine. 65, you know, or 50. But you can't tell me when you're doing a sketch and a model that you need that tight of a tolerance. That's something that will drive engineers batty. If you share your model as a portfolio piece or dimension it, and it's got that, what happens is that's a tick against you. When they look at you and you say, yes, I know Solidworks, that's where they look at it and say, well, to what level of refinement? How do you know not only how to model, but how to make a model that other people can interact with? So there's my circle. I'm going to come back. We're going to do our cut extrude. And this time, I'm just going to go blind, or I'm going to say, you know what? It's 11 millimeters. So that's how far my cut is going to go. What that means is, at 11 millimeters is where my cut ends. So, let's say we come back and we go, well, you know what? I need this base to be thicker because I don't like the way this looks. I'm going to edit it and let's thicken it in a second direction. And I'm going to go 11 millimeters thicker. Well, my cut's gone. And the reason my cut's gone is because I only told it to go 11 millimeters deep. Now this is thick 11 millimeters, so I then have to go in and come back here and go edit feature. Let's make it 12 millimeters so that it goes, or 21, whatever, so that it goes all the way through. This is one of those things where when you update your model, you get all this crap that you got to go back through and fix. Sometimes it's crashes, sometimes it's the horrible looking red X, sometimes it's that yellow little warning sign. You'll see a lot of my models, if I'm not handing them off to engineers, I got those yellow things all over the place. I know what the problem is and I can't be bothered to fix it, and there's no value in me fixing it. So, but to go back to something else. So what I'm going to do, let's just go back. We'll change these things. Control Z can be your friend. Now, for this cut, let's edit it. If I know that I'm always going to want that hole there, no matter what I do, that hole has to be there. Instead of doing it a distance, as you can see, because 30 millimeters, if this has to grow, we already saw what the problem was with that. This is what's called blind. It's just going to whatever dimension I want it to. If I come in and I go up to surface, I'm going to select this surface. It knows that no matter where that surface is, my cut has to go through. So if I come back up here and either the engineer, the senior designer, me, whoever decides that that needs to be thicker, it doesn't matter how big I make it, that command knows that that cut always has to go to that surface. So that's just one of those things that allows you to have a little bit more freedom And you can see what I don't have to do then is by using the right command is to go in and save myself a step down the road. For one, I make a change here. It's the cascading effect. If I make a change here, how's that going to affect the 50 things that I did after it? Well, I now know that that's never going to affect anything. That command can be really awesome when we start doing surfacing because you can get some really simple shapes. Now, what we've got here is our object. Let's just say we're going to dump a radius on here. Fillet, whatever. Let's fillet this baby all up. Now, I know this is one fillet. 3 edges are filleted. I'm always going to want those the same, so we'll accept that. Now, here's the next thing I want to do. Well, I want to put a fillet around all these edges. So again, I can come in, select that. Since these are all tangent, it'll follow that line 100%. And let's say that's what I want. But I don't want to have to go back and do each and every one of these. I know that these are all a geometric pattern. So let me see if I can come in, and we're going to go circular pattern. And I want that fillet to go around that axis. And you can see it's going to go on each edge. Huh? Try again by decreasing the number of instances or the distance between instances. Well, that's dumb. 1, 2, 3. Oh. Okay. So it's not going to let me do that. I don't know why. Let me try something else here. So I'm going to come back. We're going to edit that. We'll do that. And I'm actually going to do this one at the same time. Everything looks good. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to do a circular pattern. Select my direction around there. Select my fillet. Still gives me the error. Okay. What are our options here? So you can run through this. So I've selected the axis I want. I've selected equal spacing. You can see here that it's showing up in all the right spots. It's not a body. Geometry pattern. Let's see what that does. Now it gives it to me. Let's pull something up. So, all you need to know about geometry pattern. YouTube, Google is your friend. What the geometry pattern does is if for some reason it feels that it's too complex for it to do, it breaks it down into individual parts. So it simplifies it. So when I do a pattern feature, if for some reason it doesn't want to do it, what it may be is that it is too complex for some reason. It seems simple, but for some reason it wants to be complex. I'll come down and I'll go geometry pattern. This is also where it's confusing because it showed it to me, it gave me a preview, but it doesn't want to execute it. So, geometry pattern. Now, this is one of those instances where if you're struggling on the model and you're struggling on the tutorial and it says, hey, do this, and it's not working, because nowhere in here did it say to turn on geometry pattern. Ping me. Send me a Discord, whatever you want to do, because that's one of those things where it's something going on with the software. You're doing everything right, but you just don't know that little button to click. And it's not telling you that you should click that. Because their software is perfect, why would it ever not work in their tutorial? Sorry, that's me being facetious. So, we've got that right now. Now, we want to add the last radius, which is going to be around this edge. Now, let me just show you something here. This is where the order of the radiuses come in. So if I try to add a radius around that edge, and you know what? Give me a second here. Oh, so if I want to hide these, I'll click all three together, holding the shift key, left mouse button, right click, and I can just turn it off with the eye. It bothers me sometimes. So if I want to put a radius all the way around this area, and I click this edge, it stops right here because it can't wrap around a corner. There's no smooth direction for it. So if I do that, but I come and say, okay, well then I'm going to click that edge, I'm going to click that edge, I'm going to click that edge, and I can keep going, is a bit of a pain. What I could also do, or actually if I click it too, you can see that if I look at this radius, there's a hard edge there. It's not very nice. Imagine if this was clay and you wanted to put a radius there and you drag your finger around, you get this nice transition. Well, in order to get that nice radius that goes, hold on, you know what? Let us do this here quickly. Let's see. Shoot, I'll have to record a lot of stuff, so that's easy. File, open, no. So let's say that I want this to be a nice smooth radius. So comes in and does that and has a nice smooth transition. Well, in order to get that, I need to have the radius here. So then that's going to come up, it's going to go over. So that this goes down nicely in this direction, and then this radius flows this direction really clean. But in order to do that, I have to put my radiuses in the right order. So here, there's a hard edge at every one of these stops. So I can't get that in there properly. Now, I had already put that other radius in there. And you can see if I add that other radius after the fact, again, you get this weird triangle. We'll go over a lot of this later on how these hit highlights in that. But I still have to go around to each individual edge. Now, if I move this radius to take place after that, it's going to yell at me. So let's delete it, because I don't know why it wants to yell at me. Oh, whoops. I need to put it after that pattern. I forgot I did the pattern. Nope, still didn't like it. So what we're going to do, oh, that's why. When I made that change, okay, so here's a good thing. When I made that change, I had put the radius on different edges. Those edges no longer exist now that I moved it all the way down here. And you can see some filleted items are no longer in the model. The filleted items are those edges. What I can do is I come back in and I can open it up and say, well, where are the edges? Well, there it's showing me in the red where those edges are that are no longer there. So I'm just going to clear all the missing references. And now, since this radius wraps, I can click this. It will also go all the way around because there's tangency. There's not a hard edge that it has to stop at. I'll hit select. I still have this little triangle wedge, and the reason for that is this radius is too small for this big radius to wrap around. So if I was to come in, and now this is more aesthetics. If this is what I needed, and it's an engineering part, and it's a cast part, who cares? If I make it smaller, now you can see that it wraps around, and this would be a nice smooth highlight where the highlight's going to flow, pool here, and then go in this direction. That's just a really brief overview. We'll go into that at far greater detail later. Let's go back to 1. Okay, there's our part. Oh, let's add a radius there. Now again, I have to go around and click all the lines, or I forgot to do that, but I know I want that on all of them. I'm going to come back. If I click on the object, it goes back to where that was. So let's roll back to that. That's the circular pattern. What I want to do though is I want to go before the circular pattern because I want to add that radius. And I'm going to say, let me put this radius in here now. I'm going to go down to where my circular pattern was. You're going to see that that radius is not on everything, but I want that to be part of that pattern that was all these items. So I can just come in, right click, and then what it's going to do, here's my features. I can come to my drop down window here, and I can add that fillet. So now I've just added to that pattern. I'll hit yes. It looks good. And I can scroll down to here. And everything is updated. So just because you don't put things in order, now if I wanted to, I could have just, and I've done this too, where it's like, oh, shoot, let me just slap things in because I'm going so fast that I don't want to go back. It's just quicker for me to do that. But then the problem is where I save time in building the initial model, if I have to go and change it, it takes me longer. So it's that double-edged sword. If I have a client who says, I need a model in an hour, well, I give them a model in an hour, and that's the quality of the model. They got what they got in the time that they want it. And if they come back and they say they want to make changes, then it's going to probably take longer, and it's going to cost them more. Same as if a client says, you know what, I just need some 3D models of this and I want you to do some renderings. Well, I'm going to model that up, and I'll ask them, because I know what can happen. I'll say, are you going to use this model for anything else? No. Okay. This is going to cost you $3,000 to model up and render it. That's the model I build. We talked about that before, the 3 different types of models. If they come back to me and say, ooh, we want to prototype this now, I'm going to look at them and I'm just going to say, well, there's about 5 hours worth of remodeling I need to do. Well, why? Because you wanted me just to make a model for rendering, and that was what was quoted, and that's what was in the budget. So it's understanding that and moving it forward. I've always asked, or I learned to always ask, are you going to do anything else? If they say, well, we might want to prototype it, then I say, okay, then it's going to be $4,500. Well, why? Because I'm going to build the model in a way that it'll be used for renderings, but you can use it for prototyping, versus the $3,500 to do the rendering, and then another $2,000 because I got to go back and do things differently. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So this is a great place to stop. Let's take a 15-minute break. And then what I think I'm going to do, last year I don't think I gave enough key shot learnings until too late in the semester. I want to try to integrate that sooner. So after this, what I'm going to do is I'll bring it into Keyshot and do a quick Keyshot demo. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Let me pause my recording.